Hey everyone, I'm Olivia Thompson. I blink my eyes open, the harsh fluorescent lights stinging my retinas. Everything's blurry. Where am I? What happened? I try to move, but my body feels impossibly heavy, like it's made of lead. She's awake. Doctor, come quick. A voice calls out, and suddenly the room fills with activity. Faces I don't recognize hover over me, talking quickly. I catch fragmented words from their conversation. Coma, 6 months. Car accident. Wait, what? Olivia, honey, can you hear me? It's my mom's voice, but something about it feels off, like guilt is wrapped around each word. Mom? I croak, my voice rough and raspy from disuse. What's going on? You've been in a coma, sweetie. There was an accident, my dad adds, his voice strained and unfamiliar. As the fog in my mind slowly starts to clear, questions flood in. Where's Ethan? And Amber? A thick silence falls over the room, suffocating. The doctor clears his throat. Let's focus on you right now, Olivia. How are you feeling? Over the next few days, I learned the extent of my injuries and the grueling road to recovery ahead. But something still feels wrong. My parents are acting strange, and the hospital staff seems to tiptoe around me. I haven't seen Ethan or Amber once. Mom, where's my engagement ring? I ask one day during her visit. She flinches, then quickly glances at the clock. Oh, look at the time. I should get going. Your father will be here soon. As I regain my strength, I overhear my parents whispering in the hallway. We need to tell her the truth, John, my mom says urgently. Not yet, Helen. The doctor said it could set back her recovery, my dad responds, his voice low. Tell me what? What aren't they saying? That night, I convinced Sarah, the night nurse, to let me borrow her phone, just for a few minutes. She hesitates but hands it over, glancing nervously around. My fingers tremble as I open Facebook and my heart drops into my stomach. There on my profile are dozens of recent posts and photos. But they're not of me. They're of Amber. Amber at my job. Amber with my friends. Amber with Ethan. My hands shake as I scroll through post after post. It's like staring into a warped mirror, my life reflected back at me, but wrong. So wrong. Nurse, I call out, my voice trembling. I need to speak to my parents, now. Sarah rushes in, concern etched on her face. Olivia, what's wrong? I turn the phone towards her, showing her Amber's face grinning back from my profile. Everything, I whisper, everything is wrong. As Sarah leaves to call my parents, I lie there, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. What the hell happened while I was asleep? And more importantly, what am I going to do about it? The door creaks open and my parents walk in, guilt etched deep into their faces. It's time for answers, and I'm not letting them leave until I get them. Start talking, I demand, my voice steadier than I feel. What's going on with Amber? Where's Ethan? And don't you dare lie to me. The silence is thick and uncomfortable. My mom opens her mouth, then closes it again, her eyes darting nervously to my dad. I'm going home, I declare, struggling to zip my bag with my still weak hands. Honey, maybe that's not the best idea right now, Mom says softly, exchanging a worried glance with Dad. Why not? It's my apartment, isn't it? The silence that follows feels deafening. Isn't it? I repeat, more forcefully this time. My dad sighs deeply. Olivia, there's something we need to tell you. But I don't wait to hear the rest. I'm already out the door, hailing a cab. My parents trail behind, protesting weakly, but I don't care. The ride home is tense, filled with their vague warnings and my cold, stony silence. As soon as I walk through the door of my apartment, I see them, Amber and Ethan, cuddled up on my couch in my living room, like they belong there. Like I'm the intruder. What the hell? My voice is barely above a whisper, but the shock in the room is palpable. Amber jumps up, her face a mask of guilt and fake concern. Olivia, you're home. We didn't expect you so soon. Clearly, I spit the word out, my heart pounding. What are you doing here? In my home? With my fiancé? Ethan stands, looking everywhere, but Liv, I can explain, Ethan says, his voice wavering. Oh, this should be good. I snarl, my initial shock quickly morphing into rage. Explain how you're cuddling with my sister in our home. Amber steps forward, her hands raised in a placating gesture. Olivia, please, we were just trying to keep your life intact while you were away. I laughed bitterly. I was in a coma, Amber, not on vacation. And how exactly does that explain you living in my home, sleeping with my fiancé? It's not like that, Ethan interjects weakly. Then what is it like? I demand, my voice sharp. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my twin sister has stolen my entire life. Amber's face crumples. I was just trying to help. Your job, your apartment. I couldn't let it all slip away while you were gone. And Ethan? Screwing my fiancé. Was that part of your heroic efforts too? The silence that follows is damning. Ethan's face turns pale and Amber looks like she might be sick. How long? I ask, my voice dangerously quiet. How long has this been going on? Ethan swallows hard, his eyes avoiding mine. Liv, we started before the accident. He hesitates. I'm so sorry. The world tilts as his words sink in. Before the accident. They've been betraying me for over 6 months, maybe longer. I turn to my parents, who've been hovering anxiously in the doorway. Did you know? I asked, my voice shaking. Their guilty faces tell me everything I need to know. We thought, if you woke up, the shock might be too much, Mom stammers. I let out a harsh, broken laugh. Well, consider me thoroughly shocked. Without another word, I grab my bag and storm out, ignoring their pleas to talk it out. I don't stop until I find myself at a coffee shop, my hands trembling as I dial Sophie's number. When she picks up, I finally break down. Olivia? Oh my God, is it really you? Amber said you didn't want to talk to anyone after. Amber lied. I choke out. She's been lying about everything. 20 minutes later, Sophie bursts into the coffee shop, wrapping me in a fierce hug. I can't believe this, she mutters. I knew something was off, but I never imagined. As I pour out the whole sordid story, her face cycles through shock, anger, and finally, determination. I take a deep breath, staring at my phone. It's time to start reclaiming my life, I say. I dial HR at my company, steeling myself for the conversation ahead. Hello, this is Olivia Thompson. I need to discuss my employment status. There's a long pause. I'm sorry, but Olivia Thompson is currently employed and performing excellently. Is this some kind of joke? My heart sinks. No, it's not a joke. I'm the real Olivia Thompson. I've been in a coma for 6 months, and my twin sister has been impersonating me. Another pause. I think you should speak with Mr. Jenkins. Half an hour later, I sit across from my former boss, watching his face cycle through disbelief, shock, and finally, understanding. Good God, Olivia, I don't even know what to say. Tell me about it, I mutter. Can you help me? I need my job back. My life back. Mr. Jenkins sighs, rubbing his temples. I want to help Olivia, but legally, this is a nightmare. Amber's been working as you, signing contracts, making decisions. It's not as simple as just swapping you back in. I leave his office with a vague promise of support but a growing realization. I need legal help. That's how I find myself sitting in the office of Rachel Chen, an employment lawyer with a no-nonsense attitude. Identity theft, fraud, potential embezzlement, Rachel lists, scribbling notes. We've got a case, Olivia, but it won't be easy. We need evidence. Lots of it. I nod, determination settling in. Where do we start? Friends, colleagues, anyone who can vouch for your identity. And Amber's deception. Bank statements, emails, anything that shows she's been acting as you. Sophie becomes my partner in crime, helping me track down old contacts. It's a mixed bag. Some are shocked to hear from me, having bought into Amber's lies. Others, like my old college roommate Jenna, are furious on my behalf. I knew something was off, Jenna exclaims. Amber never could nail your laugh. Count me in as a witness. But for every ally, there's a setback. Rumors start circulating about my mental state. I heard she's confused from the coma I overhear at a coffee shop. Thinks her sister stole her life. Sad, really. I grit my teeth, pushing through the anger and hurt. Every obstacle only fuels my determination. Amidst the chaos, there's one bright spot. David, my physical therapist. He's the first person in ages to seize me for me, not as Amber's confused twin. You're making great progress, he encourages during one of our sessions. How's everything else going? I find myself opening up to him, sharing my frustrations and small victories. His unwavering support becomes a lifeline. You've got this, Olivia, he says one day, his hand resting on my shoulder. Don't let them make you doubt yourself. His touch lingers, and for a moment I forget about the mess my life has become. But reality crashes back as my phone buzzes with a text from Rachel. Found something. Come to the office ASAP. An hour later, I'm staring at bank statements, my hands shaking with rage. She's been siphonning money from your accounts, Rachel explains. Small amounts at first, but they've been increasing. This is embezzlement, Olivia. We've got her. I should feel triumphant, but all I feel is exhaustion and anger. So much anger. What's our next move? I ask, my voice hard. Rachel's eyes glint with determination. We build our case: identity theft, fraud, embezzlement. Amber's going down, and we're going to get your life back. I step outside the office, my heart pounding. This is it. Months of fighting, of proving myself, have led to this moment. I take a deep breath and push open the door to Mr. Jenkins' office. He looks up, a smile breaking across his face. Olivia, come in, please. As I sit down, he slides a folder across the desk. It's done. Amber's been fired effective immediately, and I'd like to formally offer you your position back. I stare at the contract in front of me, emotions swirling inside. Relief, validation, and something else. Thank you, Mr. Jenkins, I say quietly, but I think I'm going to have to decline. His eyebrows shoot up in surprise. Are you sure? After everything? I nod, a sense of calm settling over me. I am. I'm starting my own firm. This whole experience has shown me what I'm capable of. I want to build something of my own. He leans back, a proud smile crossing his face. Well, I can't say I'm not disappointed, but I understand. You're going to do great things, Olivia. As I leave the office, my phone rings. It's Rachel. Olivia, it's happening. They're arresting Amber right now. I rush to the precinct, arriving just in time to see Amber being led out in handcuffs. Our eyes meet, and for a moment I see a flicker of the sister I once knew. But then it's gone, replaced by cold defiance. The next few weeks are a whirlwind. The investigation reveals Ethan's complicity in the fraud, leading to his arrest as well. My parents try to reach out, leaving tearful voicemails, sending pleading texts. Olivia, please, we're so sorry. We thought we were protecting you. I delete the messages. Maybe one day I'll be ready to hear them out. But not now. Instead, I focus on the people who stood by me: Sophie, who has been my rock through it all, and David, whose steady support has turned into something more. Months pass, and my new firm is taking off. I've just landed our biggest client yet. Later that night, as David and I walk hand in hand under the stars, I reflect on my journey. I've lost so much: my old life, my family, the future I thought I wanted. But I've gained something far more valuable, a life that's truly my own. As we walk into our future together, I realize that sometimes the worst betrayal can lead to the best rebirth. I lost my old life, but I've built a new one that's all mine, and no one can take it away from me. Now I've got a question for you. If you were in Olivia's shoes, could you ever forgive your twin sister and parents for their betrayal? Or would you, like Olivia, choose to cut ties and build a completely new life? This is a tough one. On one hand, family is supposed to have your back. On the other, what Amber and her parents did was a massive breach of trust. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'm really curious to hear where you stand on this. And hey, if you enjoyed this wild ride, hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories. And if you're new here and want more jaw-dropping tales like this, consider subscribing. I've got plenty more where this came from.
Hi everyone, my name's Taylor. I'm a single mom who's been through a lot to raise my son Eric. Many single moms have supportive families, and I thought I did too. But it turns out I was wrong. I found out the hard way. Thankfully, I was able to stand up to the people who tried to mess up my and my son's life. My ex-husband, Carl, is awful. Just thinking about him makes me sick. There was a time when I was really in love with him, but things got bad after we got married. Carl was great when we were dating, but as a husband, he was a nightmare. He became controlling and then abusive. I stayed in that marriage for over 8 years because he manipulated me and made me feel like I had to stay. At first, I thought my son deserved a father, so I didn't leave right away. Things got worse one day when Eric was 5. Carl started hitting me really hard, and my poor son saw me in pain and tried to stop his dad. But Carl was so angry that he ended up pushing Eric to the floor. That was the breaking point for me. I called Child Protective Services, CPS, and the police, and they helped keep Carl away from us. But he was determined to get back at me. He said, "You think you can run away from me, Taylor? That will never happen. Sooner or later, I will have you and my son back in my house. Just wait and watch." "We're getting a divorce, Carl. There's no way I'll allow you near me and my son again, even if we divorce. I'll find a way to protect Eric. I am his dad, and I have rights." Carl's behavior and his violent history made me very scared. My son was deeply affected and had to go to therapy to cope with what happened. After a long court battle, Carl and I were finally divorced. But that wasn't the end of it. Moved far away to live near my parents and sister to be safe from Carl. I even got restraining orders against him. It was the most horrible time of my life. Carl never knew exactly where I moved. He could have guessed, but he didn't have my exact address. Being near my family made me feel safe again. However, my parents weren't really supportive of my decision to divorce. They asked, was it really necessary to get a divorce? Couldn't you two have gone to therapy and worked things out? It's not a big deal. Poor little Eric has to lose his dad over your problems. That's so unfair. He must be devastated not being able to see his dad. I was shocked. Are you serious right now? Carl used to beat me up, Mom. He even put his hands on Eric. My son was only trying to protect me. How can you not see what a monster Carl is? Mom, Dad, you need to be more sympathetic toward Taylor. She's been through a lot. You have no right to make her feel guilty. She did the right thing. At first, my parents tried to talk me into letting Eric see his dad, but I never allowed it. They were never happy with my decision. They kept saying, "Why don't you let Carl visit Eric? He must miss his son." How would you feel if I wasn't around when you were growing up? I know I would have been devastated. Taylor, you grew up in a household with two parents. You can't be. You're so selfish with Eric. He deserves his father's love. Soon he'll start resenting you for keeping his dad out of his life. What are you even talking about? Eric is terrified of his dad. He begs me not to let him near us again. He has no desire to see his dad, and neither do I. You must be influenced by all the terrible things you've heard about Carl. Dad, if Carl was a good man and a loving father, he wouldn't have hit me in front of Eric, or at all. No matter how hard I tried, they wouldn't agree with my decision. But as time passed, they seemed to accept it. They were close to Eric and made great-grandparents. Eric bonded with them and his Aunt Blair. I think part of why my parents stopped pushing me was that I was financially supporting them. Blair and I sent them money each month because Dad doesn't have a good job and Mom doesn't work. Money might have been why they stopped bringing it up. Eric started school nearby and had a good job in an office. Things were going well, and I was happy surrounded by family. I had no idea my loved ones could be so awful to me. The second biggest betrayal of my life happened just a year after I left Carl. I was getting ready for a business trip to another city. I couldn't take Eric with me because there were no childcare options at work. I was stuck, wondering what to do with Eric, when my mom and dad suggested a plan. "So, I heard you'll be leaving for a business trip soon. Your dad and I have been thinking about babysitting Eric for you. We can stay at your house and take care of both Eric and the house. Are you sure about this? Eric can be a handful, plus leaving your apartment empty could be a hassle. It's only for a few days, so I don't think it will be much trouble. We love Eric, and he loves us too. I'm sure he'll be thrilled to spend these days with us. Yeah, the two of us can stay here and babysit for you. Your house will be safe when you go on this trip. It's like getting two benefits in one." Since they insisted so much, I agreed to let them babysit Eric and stay at my house until I returned. I felt satisfied with the arrangements because I trusted my parents completely. Now I know I made a huge mistake. I shouldn't have trusted them at all. My business trip started a week later. I flew out at night after saying goodnight to Eric. I had to leave a day early to prepare for a meeting with a big client the next morning. Called my parents and Eric after reaching the hotel, and everything seemed normal. I had no idea what was about to happen that night while I was in my hotel room preparing for my meeting the next day. Blair called me, and for some reason, it made me nervous. I thought something might be wrong at home. Picked up the call feeling anxious. "Hey, Taylor, have you already flown out for your business trip?" "Yes, Blair. I arrived yesterday." "It's not a long trip." "Why? What's wrong? Did you leave Eric with our parents?" "Yes, Taylor. I think you made a mistake. I don't think you should have left Eric with them. I think they're planning something, and you won't like it." "What do you mean? Tell me everything right now. You're scaring me." "I think Mom and Dad might try to make Eric meet with Carl. They've been against your decision to get the restraining orders. You know how much they disapproved of your divorce and everything. I have a bad feeling they'll take Eric to Carl." "No, no, no. Mom and Dad can't do that. There must be some misunderstanding. They didn't approve of the divorce, but they went inside with an abuser. I know you trust them a lot, but please be careful. If you need anything, I'm here. Thanks, Blair. I'll be careful. Don't worry." Blair's words made me very uneasy, so I decided to call my parents and check in with them. "Hey, Mom, could you put Eric on the phone? I want to talk to him." "Sure, Taylor. Hold on." "Mom, are you there?" "Hi, Eric. I'm just checking in. Is everything okay? Are you having a good time?" "Mom, I need to tell you something. Grandma and Grandpa called Dad. Oh my God, my phone is about to die. I'm so sorry." "Taylor, now I have to charge my phone. Why don't you call back later? Eric is fine and playing with us. You don't have to worry about anything. Take care. Bye." Something about the way Eric tried to talk to me made me suspicious, especially when Mom snatched the phone away before he could finish his words. My head was spinning from the situation, so I decided to check the security camera footage. I didn't have cameras inside the house, but I had them outside. Lo and behold, in my driveway was my ex-husband's car. I was shocked. I remembered the footage and saw Carl's car parked at my house. My mom had opened the door for him. I was furious and scared for Eric's and my own safety. Carl wasn't supposed to have my address. I even had a restraining order against him. He shouldn't have been near my son. I called my parents immediately, and I recorded the call. "Mom, why the hell is Carl at my house? What's going on? Who permitted you to let him in? God, you need to relax, Taylor. Carl is not here. Why would you even say such a thing? Mom, I can see his car parked in my driveway. Did you forget that I have security cameras outside? I saw you open the door for him." There was a long silence on their end. Neither of them spoke. I can tell I've made them nervous, but nothing prepared me for what happened next. "Look, I know you're upset at Carl and us, but you're being very unreasonable. You need to cut us some slack. Yes, I'm very disappointed in you, Taylor. You can't separate a son from his father. Eric needs Carl in his life. You're not being a good mom. Please tell me you're joking. Carl physically abused me. He even hit Eric when he tried to save me. How can you allow Carl back into his life? That was a long time ago, Taylor. We must forgive people. He's changed. Your stupid restraining order was causing a lot of problems." "Yes, so your mom and I decided to take matters into our own hands. Since you wouldn't do it, we gave Carl our address and reunited father and son. They're so happy together. Mom, Dad, I'll give you exactly 5 minutes to kick Carl out. If you don't, there will be consequences. Don't threaten us, Taylor. We're your parents. You're 3,000 miles away. Carl will stay here as long as he wants. We're planning a picnic tomorrow. Now I'm hanging up before you talk any more nonsense. Mom said that and simply hung up on me. I literally gave them 5 minutes to kick Carl out. But when 5 minutes passed, his car was still in the driveway. I'd had enough at that point. I felt scared and betrayed, so I quickly called law enforcement. I gave them the rundown of the situation and told them to arrest Carl. I also instructed them to take Eric from my parents and give him to Blair. The police acted fast and reached my house within 5 minutes. Staying near a police station was the best decision of my life. I saw them confront my parents and Carl through the CCTV footage. My mom and dad looked panicked as the police went in to arrest Carl. Mom called me and said, "Taylor, what is wrong with you? Did you call the cops on us?" "Carl could go to jail. He will go to jail, Mom. And so will you if you don't leave my house right now. I don't want you and Dad on my property again. I've called Blair. She will come and take Eric. You will never come near us again." "How dare you, Taylor? You are a horrible woman. I wish you were never born. You cannot kick us out and take our grandchildren from us. We won't let that happen. Good luck with that, Mom and Dad. The police will stop and arrest you if you do anything stupid. They know that Eric will go with Blair. You can't do this. We have grandparent rights. We will sue you. Good luck trying to fight me in court. It'll be fun to see the judge's reaction when she realizes that you brought an abusive man in my house despite a restraining order. You'll be laughed out of court." Before either of my parents could reply, the police came out with handcuffs. Carl was escorted to the police car and put in the back seat. It gave me relief and satisfaction to see him back with the police. Then the police started to talk to my parents. They were flustered, and my dad was starting to shout at the cops. I'm sure they were trying to argue about Eric. Right then, my sister Blair showed up. She showed the cops her ID and took Eric with her. My parents tried to stop her, but the police intervened and kept them at bay. Then the cops stayed behind until my parents gathered their stuff and left the premises. My sister locked my house and took the keys from them. My parents tried to call and scream at me about the whole situation, but I didn't answer their calls. They started texting me with some weird messages, so I recorded all their texts because they were getting really interesting. "What you did today wasn't right, Taylor. There will be consequences for this. You have no right to take Eric away from us. I can't believe you're my daughter. I hate you. You won't be able to keep us away, Taylor. You're a working woman. You won't be with Eric all the time. We'll get visitation from the court, and then we'll take Eric away from you. One CPS call from us can take Eric away. If you think you're smart, we're much smarter. We'll call CPS and tell them bad stuff. They'll place Eric in our care, and he'll never return to you. We know where Eric goes to school. We know your address. We'll find a way to be with him. You can't stop us. If you act crazy, we'll take him away from you. You'll never see him again." My parents are not only horrible, but also very foolish. They still expect that everything will go their way. They had no idea what I was going to do. Only time will show them. Meanwhile, Carl had already made a huge mistake by teaming up with my parents. He would suffer as well. I quickly finished my work and returned home as soon as possible. Blair kept Eric safe, and he was staying at her house. Eric was extremely relieved to see me again. "Mom, you came back. I thought you wouldn't come back for me." "Eric, what are you saying?" "I went on a business trip. Of course, I was coming back. Dad said you had left me, Mom. He said he would take me away with him and showed me pictures of his house and everything. I was scared. I didn't want to go with him." "Eric, listen to me. I will never let Carl take you or even be near you again. I'm not going anywhere. I promise you." I spent a long time consoling Eric and making sure he was okay. Apparently, Carl was talking about me abandoning him and how he was there to take Eric away. I was furious at Carl. CBS did get involved and heard Eric's account. They recommended therapy, and Eric is already going to one. I have also signed up for group therapy for both of us. Our therapist is great and really helps us deal with our trauma. All the documentation of crimes committed by Carl was used by my lawyer in court. He was charged with attempted kidnapping and violating a restraining order. He's looking at jail time. I'm currently in the process of terminating Carl's rights to Eric. My son deserves a good dad, not an abuser like Carl. My lawyer is skilled, and we are hoping for a smooth process. As for my parents, they tried to sue me for grandparent rights, but the judge dismissed the case after seeing my court history and the texts they sent. I went a step ahead and got restraining orders against them, which the judge approved right away. Currently, I have moved with my son to a different state. I got a promotion at work and took a higher position in a different city, which helped me move away from my parents. Blair visits me from time to time and has cut off contact with our parents. She's even considering moving to my city. My parents are having a hard time financially since Blair and I stopped helping them. They were forced to look for extra jobs, and lawyer fees drained their savings, making them financially unstable. Meanwhile, my son and I are thriving in this new environment. I have no intention of ever contacting my parents or allowing Carl to traumatize my son again.
Hey there, I'm Darlena, and here's the deal. I'm 35, a journalist for a major news network, and I've always had a knack for sniffing out stories. But no amount of investigative skill could have prepared me for the curveball life threw my way. It all started 3 years ago. Back then, I was living the dream, great career, and I was married to Jake, a dreamy marine biologist. We were that couple everyone loved to hate. Babe, guess what? Jake had said one morning, bounding into the kitchen, his eyes bright with excitement. I got the grant for the deep-sea expedition. I was so proud of him, so thrilled. If only I'd known. 2 months into his expedition, I got the call that shattered my world. Jake's ship had gone down in a storm, no survivors. I remember collapsing, the phone slipping from my hand. Hours later, my best friend Megan found me like that. "Oh my God, Dar," she cried, rushing over to hold me as I sobbed uncontrollably. "He's gone, Meg," I whispered. "Jake's gone." The months that followed were a blur of grief. Jake's brother, Tom, became my rock. "He'd want you to keep living, Balina," Tom would say, his eyes filled with sadness but pushing me to move forward. Even Claire, Jake's ex from college, reached out, offering her sympathy. "I'm so sorry, Darlena. Jake was one of the good ones." Eventually, I dragged myself back to work. My editor, David, started me off slow. "Take your time, Darlena. You'll get back to the hard-hitting stories when you're ready." But I threw myself into work, seeking solace in the one thing that made sense: investigative journalism. Yet something nagged at me. Little details about Jake's death didn't add up: a missing lifeboat, a distress signal that didn't match the ship's equipment. "You're obsessing, Dar," Megan would say, her voice soft but firm. "You need to let him go." Maybe she was right. Maybe I was just clinging to hope. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. 3 years passed. I was at my desk, working on a story about financial fraud, when David handed me a new assignment: insurance scams. "It's a goldmine of human interest stories," he said. "Dive in." I was knee-deep in research when it happened. My eyes were glazed over from hours of footage and interviews when something in the background of a travel show caught my attention. A flash of a familiar face. My heart stopped. It couldn't be. I rewound the footage, slowing it down. There, clear as day, was Jake, my Jake, alive, sipping a cocktail on a sun-drenched beach. "This is insane," I muttered, rubbing my eyes. I wasn't seeing things. I called Megan, my voice shaking. "Meg, you need to come over. Now." When she arrived, I showed her the footage. Her eyes widened in shock. "Holy Dar, that's Jake. But it can't be. He's dead. We had a funeral. You scattered his ashes." Megan grabbed my hand. "We need to look into this. If there's even a chance." We delved deeper. The travel show was recent, filmed just a few months ago. Jake was alive. He faked his death. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Why? Why would he do this? I whispered, feeling sick. More digging revealed the unthinkable. Jake was living in the Maldives, and he wasn't alone. In photo after photo, there he was, his arm around Claire, his ex-girlfriend. Laughing. Happy. While I was grieving, he was living it up with her. Megan's face was grim. You need to confront Tom. If anyone knows the truth, it's him. I cornered Tom at his office. His face went pale the moment he saw me. Darlena? What's going on? Cut the crap, Tom, I snapped, slamming my hand on his desk. I know Jake's alive. I know about him and Claire. His eyes darted nervously. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. I was shaking now. I saw him, Tom. On a travel show in the Maldives with Claire. Tom slumped in his chair, defeated. I didn't know at first. I swear. But Jake contacted me about a year ago. He made me promise not to say anything. He said it was complicated. Complicated? I let out a bitter laugh. I warned him, Tom. I cried myself to sleep for months. Tom reached for me, his voice soft. I'm so sorry, Darlena. I wanted to tell you, but you chose your lying, cheating brother over me? Over the truth? My voice cracked as I stared at Tom, disbelief giving way to a rising storm of anger. Without waiting for his answer, I turned and stormed out, my mind spinning. Everything I thought I knew about the man I loved, the life we built, the future we had planned was gone, erased in an instant. Back home, I stood in front of the evidence we gathered, photos, videos, financial records. It was all there, mocking me. What are you going to do? Megan asked quietly, her voice full of concern. I took a deep breath, feeling a fire ignite deep inside me. I'm going to find out exactly what happened, and then I'm going to make them pay. I stared at Jake's face in a recent photo, his arm wrapped around Claire. The grief, the pain, and the confusion all hardened into something else. A cold, unshakable determination. Game on, Jake, I whispered. You have no idea what's coming. From that moment, I threw myself into the investigation with an intensity that bordered on obsession. Every waking moment was consumed with digging, researching, connecting the dots. My living room turned into a chaotic crime scene board, photos, documents, and sticky notes covering every available surface. Darlena, you need to sleep, Megan urged, her eyes full of worry. I waved her off. Sleep is for people who haven't been betrayed by their dead husbands. Piece by piece, it all began to make sense. I uncovered a massive life insurance payout, $2 million, collected just after Jake's supposed death. The money had been funneled through offshore accounts, finally landing in a bank in the Maldives. Look at this, I said, pointing to a document. Claire quit her job a week before Jake's ship went down. She knew. She was in on it from the start. But what gutted me most was discovering Tom's involvement. I found emails between him and Jake, dated months before the staged death, where they discussed the plan. Tom had helped orchestrate the whole thing. That lying bastard, I muttered through clenched teeth. He looked me in the eye at the funeral. He held me while I cried. I needed to flush them out, to make them panic and slip up. That's when the idea struck. Megan, I need a favor, I said, turning to her. Can you leak a story? Make it seem like the authorities are closing in on a big insurance fraud case. Don't name names, but make sure it's clear it involves a faked death at sea. Megan grinned. Consider it done. The effect was immediate. Jake made a frantic call to Tom, which I managed to record using a bug I'd planted in Tom's office. They're onto us, Tom. Jake's voice crackled with panic. We need to move the money now. Calm down, Tom replied, though his voice wavered. It might not be about us. Don't be naive. Jake snapped. It's too specific. I smiled grimly, listening to their desperation. Got you, you bastards. Over the next few days, I watched as they scrambled, making mistake after mistake. Jake liquidated accounts, leaving a clear paper trail. Claire booked flights under an alias, but I traced them with ease. Everything was falling into place. I compiled bank records, travel documents, emails, and phone calls into a damning pile of evidence. A story of deceit and betrayal that spanned continents. As I organized the final pieces, I felt a mix of triumph and sadness. This was it, the final nail in the coffin of my marriage and a life I thought I had. Are you sure you want to do this? Megan asked, watching me work. I nodded, my jaw set in determination. They took everything from me, Meg. My trust, my love, years of my life. It's time they faced the consequences. My gaze drifted to a photo of Jake and me on our wedding day, still sitting on my desk. With a decisive motion, I turned it face down. No more tears, I thought. No more grief. It's time for justice. I took a deep breath and hit send. My anonymous tip, along with a mountain of evidence, was now in the hands of the insurance company and the financial authorities. There was no turning back. Within days, the news exploded. Massive insurance fraud uncovered in tropical paradise, the headlines screamed. I watched as Jake and Claire's world unraveled. Their accounts were frozen, their assets seized. Paradise lost. Tom wasn't spared either. His law firm suspended him pending an investigation. His carefully crafted reputation was crumbling, just like the rest of their lives. It was time for the final confrontation. I set up a video call, my heart pounding as Jake's face appeared on the screen. He looked canned, stress had etched new lines around his eyes. Dorina, what's going on? Have you seen the news? I smiled coldly. Oh, I've seen it, Jake. In fact, I broke it. His face went pale. What? What are you talking about? Cut the act. I know everything. The faked death, the insurance scam, Claire, Tom's involvement, all of it. Jake's facade crumbled. Dar, please, I can explain. I never meant to hurt you. I was in trouble. I needed a way out. Please, you have to forgive me. I laughed bitterly. Forgive you? For letting me think you were dead? For watching me grieve while you lived it up with your ex? Not a chance in hell, Jake. But we were happy once, weren't we? Don't you remember all those plans we made? I remember a lie, I said, cutting him off. Every moment, every promise, it was all based on deception. You're not the man I thought I married. That man never existed. Jake's eyes filled with tears. Dorina, please, I still love you. We can start over. No, Jake, we can't. Goodbye. I ended the call, feeling a strange mix of relief and emptiness. It was over, really, truly over. The story was too big to ignore. With my editor's blessing, I turned my investigation into a groundbreaking series on complex fraud. It was raw, personal, and it struck a nerve with the public. Suddenly, I was the story. Talk shows, podcasts, conferences, everyone wanted to hear from the journalist who had unraveled her own husband's lies. My career soared as I became a respected voice in investigative journalism. A year later, I stood on stage, accepting a prestigious award for my fraud investigation series. The lights were bright, the applause thunderous, but all I could think about was the journey that had brought me here. This award, I said into the microphone, my voice steady, is for every person who's been betrayed, who's had to rebuild their life from the ashes of deception. Your truth matters. Your story matters. And let me tell you, there's life after betrayal. There's strength in surviving. As I left the stage, my phone buzzed with a news alert. Jake and Claire had been sentenced. They were facing years in prison. Tom had avoided jail time, but he'd been disbarred. His reputation, in tatters. Later that night, I sat in my new apartment, looking out over the city lights. So much had changed in a year. The pain was still there, a dull ache in my chest, but it had been overshadowed by my success and newfound purpose. My laptop sat open, a blank document staring back at me, the beginnings of a book about my experience, about healing from betrayal. I began to type. I thought I was living a love story. Turns out, it was a mystery. This is how I solved it. As the words flowed, a sense of peace washed over me. I had survived, no more than that. I had thrived. Jake, Claire, Tom, they had tried to break me, but instead, they had forged me into something stronger. Megan called, her voice excited. Dare, I just heard about the book deal. This is huge. I smiled. Thanks, Meg. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Please, he scoffed, you're a force of nature, Dorina. I just give you a little push now and then. After we hung up, I stood by the window, watching the city below. A year ago, I thought my life was over. Now I realized it was just beginning. I had a voice now, a platform. I could help others who had been deceived, show them there was light at the end of the tunnel. My pain had become my purpose. Watch out, world, I whispered to my reflection. Dorina 2.0 was just getting started. I turned back to my laptop, ready to pour more of my story onto the page. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. No more shadows. No more lies. Just the truth and the strength to face whatever came next. The future was bright, and it was all mine. That's a wrap on Darina's journey. Now it's your turn. Was Darina justified in exposing Jake's fraud so publicly, or should she have handled it privately?
Starting today, my husband suggested we move in with my parents. Since they're my parents, it shouldn't be a problem, right? But it caught me off guard. I was shocked and almost cried because he didn't mention it before. Just a few days ago, we said goodbye to my dad at his funeral. He had been sick for a long time. Even though we were still feeling sad from the funeral, my husband packed our things and left our house. He said we were going to a villa my dad left for me. Surprisingly, my in-laws were already there, staying in the villa. My name's Natalie. I'm 33 years old, and I work as a designer. I've been living with Justin, my husband, for 3 years since we got married. My job is going well, and I think I'm a pretty successful designer. I'd earn enough money to have an apartment in my name. My mom passed away when I was in college, and last year, my dad was diagnosed with cancer. He tried treatment, but it didn't work, and the doctors said we should prepare for the worst. When my mom passed away, I was already living on my own. But my dad always kept in touch, especially after I started working. He was really important to me. When I found out how sick he was, I was devastated. I worried about him all the time, and my husband kept asking me about his health. But honestly, I didn't think he really cared. It felt like he was just waiting for my dad to die. My husband always seemed insecure because he made less money than me. I wished he'd be proud of my achievements and support me when things got tough. But he acted childish. He was always competing and only seemed happy when he was winning. My dad told us not to worry about him and to focus on our relationship, but I thought we should spend time with him while we still could. That way, we wouldn't regret it later. I started to resent my husband more and more. In the beginning of our marriage, he was loving and caring, but his insensitive comments about my dad's illness hurt too much. I couldn't believe how much he changed. My husband works from home, and he said having me around distracts him. So I rented an office and started commuting. Even though I was busy with work and taking care of my dad, my husband didn't help with anything at home. He lived selfishly and didn't care about my feelings. Living with him made me realize how little he understood me, and I felt really lonely. Then my dad died. We had already sold our family home, so I was busy with funeral arrangements. But my husband was always on the phone or disappearing. He didn't seem interested in helping me at all. I begged him to help, especially during such a hard time. But he just brushed me off, saying he was getting a lot of work calls. I was so angry and disappointed in him. Losing my dad made me feel even more hurt by his coldness. On the day of the funeral, I felt incredibly sad. After spending a long time talking with his parents, my husband came back smirking. Their suspicious looks made me feel even more alone. But despite that, the cremation, interment, and inheritance stuff went smoothly, and the funeral ended well. Then, out of the blue, my husband suggested we move in with my parents. He said, "They're your parents, so it shouldn't be a problem, right? If you're against it, should we get divorced?" He said it like it was a joke, but I couldn't stay calm. I strongly opposed the idea, especially since we didn't have any extra rooms in our apartment. One room was used as my workspace and for storing my husband's work stuff. But he just smiled and said we should live in the villa I inherited. It was a special place for me, filled with memories of my dad. I wanted to keep it that way, but my husband didn't seem to care. He kept making selfish demands. I tried to explain that living there would be tough, but he wouldn't listen. His parents had already decided to move there. They probably planned it during the funeral. Since the villa was big and peaceful, they liked it. Their move was already in progress, and I couldn't object. Every time I spoke up, my husband got mad. He accused me of only thinking about myself and being absent from home. "Because of your father's illness and all those sudden calls, do you even realize how much I've put up with? Your obsession with your father has been too much to handle. His words were harsh, and I felt like my world was falling apart. Now that your father's gone, you need to listen to me. It took him a whole year to die, which was way too long, he continued, his tone cold and heartless. I couldn't believe this was the man I married. He showed no respect for my father or me. I remembered how my dad looked in pain in his hospital bed. He wouldn't have wanted me to just obey my husband like this. In that moment, I realized all my love for my husband had disappeared. It hurt to think about how he found joy in getting the villa while I was mourning my father's death. But I held back my emotions and warned him about regretting his decision. I packed the essentials and left our home, leaving my husband puzzled. I didn't want to say anything more to him. It was painful to see my in-laws, who probably couldn't wait for my father to die so they could move in. But I followed my husband silently. The only thing I couldn't accept was him taking over my special place. The villa, although technically a villa, was just a regular home by the sea, where ordinary people lived. However, the villa's location was quite convenient, being easily accessible from the city center, and the land itself held considerable value. As I stepped out of the station, the familiar scenery of my childhood greeted me. I remembered how my mother used to be alive, and whenever I dozed off on the train, my father would carry me on his back all the way home. When we reached the villa, my in-laws were already inside. I started to suspect something fishy, realizing that my husband had secretly given them a key without my knowledge. This made me even more uneasy, sensing a secret plan to move in without my consent. Looking around the villa, I saw my in-laws' eyes shining with excitement for their future life here. Despite being a single-family home, the sturdy furniture my father had chosen was arranged in a slightly different European style, probably to my mother's taste. But their ecstatic comments irritated me. They seemed to underestimate the significance of my father's passing, seeing the villa merely as a luxurious house. Their lack of sensitivity became even more apparent when my husband joined in, laughing as they opened beers to toast the move. I sighed deeply, feeling the precious memories I shared with my parents at the dining table being tainted. I decided to hide my feelings and endure the night. The next morning, my mother-in-law's scream shattered the quiet atmosphere of the villa, instantly alerting me. When I woke up, I noticed my father-in-law and husband causing a commotion, but it took me a moment to reach the source of the scream. In the bathroom, my mother-in-law was on the floor, clutching her foot with a panicked expression. She explained that the floor had given way beneath her, but when my husband and father-in-law checked, everything seemed fine. As they examined the floor, I suggested they try stepping on a slightly differently colored part. When they did, the floorboard made a sound and slightly sunk, but then snapped back into place when lifted. I explained that it was intentional, part of what my father called a mechanical mansion or a trick house. He was a huge ninja enthusiast, and this villa was his pride and joy. He had installed traps and mechanisms throughout the villa, including floorboards that seemed to collapse but were actually harmless. As someone familiar with the house since childhood, I had no trouble navigating it, but my husband and in-laws, being unfamiliar, were shocked. They hadn't realized what they were getting into by moving here. With our apartment lease canceled and nowhere else to go, they were pressing my husband on what to do next. In the midst of this, both my father-in-law and husband accidentally triggered another trap, causing them to fall. "Please feel free to stay as long as you like," I said, but my tone was more mocking than genuine. They had been so enchanted by the luxury of the villa, ignoring my warnings and showing no interest in my father's hobbies. Now their oversight was coming back to bite them. Even when I explained the dangers of the traps, they didn't take it seriously. "We'll get used to it," my husband said confidently. "I'll head back to the apartment to prepare for our move," I replied, leaving them in the villa. But in reality, I had no moving preparations. I planned to take a few days off and sort through my father's belongings. As expected, after just 2 days, my husband and in-laws had had enough. Meanwhile, I found solace being by myself and could slowly regain a positive outlook, planning my new life. Before long, my father's villa became a minor tourist attraction in the neighborhood. It was regularly featured in local newsletters as the trick mansion hidden in a residential area. Reflecting on this, I remembered strangers touring the villa and local children playing there, making it a lively spot. Since my upbringing had made me proficient in foreign languages, I could manage calls from foreign visitors. But my husband and in-laws couldn't understand foreign languages at all. Along with the nerve-wracking lifestyle of constantly worrying about the traps, they were overwhelmed by unexpected visitors and handling calls in foreign languages. Exhausted and sleep-deprived, they stumbled back to the apartment. "Why don't we all live in this apartment together?" "Think about it," I suggested. They had longed for my father's demise to get their hands on the villa, only to give it up in just 2 days. Instead of serving them tea, I handed my husband the divorce papers, already filled out and stamped in my section. "There's no way we can live together. If you understand, just leave quickly," I explained with a deep sigh. I couldn't forgive him for disregarding my feelings and acting insensitively without consulting me or giving any explanation. My husband decided we'd live with his parents. Moreover, he had never shared household responsibilities with me before. He dumped all the household responsibilities onto me, and when I felt cornered, he seemed indifferent about it. He ignored my feelings, acted selfishly, and secretly decided to move in with his parents. I couldn't imagine continuing to live with someone like that. "What happened? You used to love me, right?" he asked obliviously. I couldn't help but laugh at his usual oblivious remarks. "You think I could love someone who wished for my beloved father's early death and would rejoice when he passed?" I handed him only the divorce papers and drove them out of the apartment. "First of all, this is my apartment. If you have a problem, you should be the one to leave." My husband raised his voice, but I responded calmly, reminding him that the apartment was under my name. They fell silent upon hearing my words. They relied on me financially and didn't have much of their own. However, I had made up my mind to cut ties before their lengthy persuasions began. Neither my husband nor my in-laws had much in savings after being evicted from the apartment and being unable to return to the villa. They now live in a cheap, low-quality apartment and are barely getting by. At first, my husband felt guilty and apologized frequently, but over time, he grew resentful of his parents. Due to their age, they rarely worked, and when they did, it didn't last long. In the end, they exhausted their savings and pension with every move, constantly argued, and became estranged as a family. The walls of the apartment were thin, letting out their daily quarrels. Even when they received noise complaints, they didn't apologize. Instead, they retaliated, causing them to be disliked by their neighbors. They might need to find a new place to live soon. My husband previously enjoyed working from home, but in the current apartment, he didn't have the luxury of a dedicated workspace. Unable to concentrate on his job, his reputation and sales plummeted. Now, he barely gets by with a late-night convenience store job and should consider juggling multiple part-time jobs. The in-laws felt their biggest mistake was letting their son control their decisions. In their frequent arguments, they blamed the villa's traps. "If you had been more responsible, we wouldn't be in this situation," they argued. "You should have checked properly." "Don't blame me now," my husband countered. "I never imagined we'd end up like this because of our son," she said, reflecting on how her parents had always wished to inherit the villa and were overjoyed when her father passed away. I will never forget that after the divorce, I made significant strides in my career as a designer. To process her father's death and all these events, she created designs incorporating ninja elements and showcased them on social media. Their popularity spread rapidly, and one day a major cosmetics company contacted her to design packaging with an Asian touch incorporating ninja elements. She felt this work would preserve her father's cherished memories. Of course, I eagerly took on this project and committed fully to it. Ultimately, it was a huge success, propelling my career forward and allowing me to give joyful updates at my parents' graves. She retained the mechanical house, keeping it as a special place filled with memories of her father. She began organizing tour schedules and, with a little tweaking, turned it into a space where both tourists and local children could enjoy for free. Soon, the house attracted significant media attention, and the income from this exposure helped to defray ongoing costs. Furthermore, online articles about the house were translated into foreign languages, leading to support from international fans. Some of the donations even came from elderly folks who shared my father's passion for ninjas. She remained dedicated to the ongoing upkeep of this magical place. Meanwhile, the mechanical house remained a daily hub of activity, a favorite among local children. Although I lost my father and the inheritance of the villa resulted in my divorce, I feel the gains have been greater than the losses, she reflected. The villa has transformed into a memory-rich location shared with family and friends. I've also undergone a personal transformation, moving forward with renewed optimism and hope.
Hi, I'm Olivia Thompson, a 16-year-old high school student. But maybe not your typical one. I have a passion for art that burns brighter than the sun. Unfortunately, in my house, it might as well be a flickering candle. I live with my parents, Mark and Linda, and my adopted sister, Emma. She's 14 and the apple of their eye. Olivia, have you seen Emma's latest test scores? Mom's voice cuts through the silence as I sketch in the living room. I sighed and set down my pencil. No, Mom. How did she do? Perfect score, as usual. We're so proud of her. I force a smile, but inside I'm screaming. It's always about Emma's achievements. Meanwhile, my latest art piece sits forgotten in the corner, gathering dust. Later that day, I vent to my best friend Zoe over the phone. I swear, Zoe, it's like I'm invisible in my own home. That's rough, Liv. But hey, didn't Mr. Johnson love your last painting? She reminds me. I smile, thinking about my art teacher's praise. Yeah, he did. At least someone notices. The next day at school, Mr. Johnson pulls me aside after class. Olivia, I've got some exciting news about an upcoming art competition. My heart races with excitement, but then a sharp pain in my stomach makes me wince. Are you okay? Mr. Johnson asks, concern written on his face. Yeah, just a stomach ache. It's nothing. I brush it off. The truth is, I've been having these pains for weeks, but I haven't told anyone. My parents are too busy with Emma, and I don't want to be a burden. That evening at dinner, I'm pushing food around my plate, the pain growing worse. I stay quiet. Emma, tell your father about your science project, Mom gushes. Emma launches into a detailed explanation, and I tune out. Suddenly, a sharp pain makes me gasp. Olivia, what's wrong? Dad finally notices. Nothing, I mutter, but cold sweat beads on my forehead. Are you sure? Mom asks, but before I can answer, her attention shifts back to Emma. I excuse myself and head to my room, clutching my stomach. As I lie in bed, I hear my parents talking in the hallway. Should we call Dr. Peterson about Olivia? Dad asks. Oh, I'm sure it's nothing, Mom dismisses. Did you see Emma's project outline? It's brilliant. Tears sting my eyes. Even when I'm in pain, I'm an afterthought. The next day at school, I'm in art class, trying to focus on my canvas. The pain is unbearable, but I grit my teeth. Mr. Johnson is explaining a new technique when suddenly the room starts spinning. Olivia? Mr. Johnson's voice sounds distant, but I can't respond. The last thing I remember is the cold floor rushing up to meet me. When I come to, the world is blurry, slowly coming into focus. I'm in a hospital bed, the antiseptic smell stinging my nose. My stomach feels like it's on fire. Olivia, can you hear me? A doctor I don't recognize is leaning over me. I try to nod, but even that small movement sends waves of pain through my body. I'm Dr. Chen. You're in the hospital. Your appendix ruptured, and we need to operate immediately. Suddenly, my parents burst into the room, looking flustered. Olivia, what happened? Mom asks, but before I can respond, her phone chimes and she glances at it. Dr. Chen turns to them, serious. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, Olivia's condition is severe. The infection could spread if we don't operate quickly. Dad nods but is busy tapping away on his phone. How long will the surgery take? We have a commitment later. I can't believe what I'm hearing. Dr. Chen looks shocked. Sir, your daughter's life is at risk. This isn't a minor procedure. Just then, Zoe rushes in. Liv, oh my God, are you okay? She grabs my hand, and I feel a lump in my throat. At least someone cares. As they prepare me for surgery, I drift in and out of consciousness, catching pieces of my parents' conversation. Mark, we can't miss Emma's science fair. She's worked so hard, Mom says. I know, Linda. Maybe we can take turns. One of us stay here, the other go to the fair, Dad suggests. I want to scream to tell them. I need them both, but the pain is overwhelming. The next thing I know, I'm being wheeled into the operating room. Dr. Chen looks concerned. Olivia, we're going to do everything we can. The rupture is quite severe, so there might be complications. As the anesthesia begins to take effect, I catch a glimpse of my parents standing by the door. Mom is on the phone. Emma, sweetie, don't worry. We'll be there for your presentation. Your sister's just having a small procedure. Small procedure? Tears slip down my cheeks as the world fades to black. When I wake up, I'm groggy and sore. Zoe is sitting by my bedside, not my parents. Hey, sleepyhead, she says softly. How are you feeling? Like I've been hit by a truck, I croak. Where are my parents? Zoe hesitates. They had to leave. Emma's science fair, remember. I close my eyes, fighting back the tears. Of course. Emma's science fair was more important than my life-threatening surgery. Dr. Chen enters, looking tired but relieved. Olivia, you gave us quite a scare. There were some complications during the surgery due to the severity of the rupture, but we managed to get everything under control. Complications? Zoe asks, squeezing my hand. Dr. Chen nods grimly. The infection had spread more than we initially thought. For a while, we were concerned. He trails off, then forces a smile. But you're a fighter, Olivia. You pulled through. I try to process the weight of his words. I could have died, and my parents aren't even here. When can I go home? I ask, though the word home feels hollow now. We'll need to keep you here for a few days to monitor for any post-operative complications. Dr. Chen explains before leaving. My phone buzzes. It's a text from Mom. Hope you're feeling better, sweetie. Emma won first place. We're taking her out to celebrate. Rest up. We'll visit tomorrow. I hand the phone to Zoe, unable to look at it anymore. She reads the text, her face darkening. Liv, I'm so sorry. This isn't right. I close my eyes, exhaustion and hurt washing over me. It's fine, I lie. I'm used to it. Hours later, I wake to the steady beep of machines. My body feels like it's been run over by a truck. The room is empty, and for a moment, panic sets in. Where is everyone? Time drags on before Zoe finally bursts into the room, her face a mix of relief and anger. Liv, I'm so sorry I couldn't be here earlier. How are you feeling? Like death warmed over, I say weakly. Where are my parents? Zoe's face falls. They're not here yet. Emma's science fair ran late, and they took her out to celebrate her win. I close my eyes, fighting back the tears. Even after major surgery, I'm still an afterthought. Later, Mr. Johnson visits, carrying a familiar portfolio under his arm. Olivia, I brought something to brighten up this dreary room. He pulls out my paintings and pins them to the walls. The burst of color against the sterile white feels like a piece of me in this place. You've got real talent, Olivia. Don't let anyone dim your light, he says warmly. His words bring some comfort, but the absence of my family leaves a cold pit in my stomach. Dr. Chen comes in for a checkup, his brow furrowed. Olivia, how are you feeling? Any pain or discomfort? I shake my head, but he doesn't look convinced. I've been trying to reach your parents to discuss your post-operative care. It's crucial that you have proper support during your recovery. Just then, my parents finally arrive, Emma in tow, all smiles and excited chatter. Olivia, honey, how are you? Mom asks, but her eyes keep darting to Emma's trophy. Dr. Chen pulls them aside, his voice low but stern. I strain to hear. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, I need to express my concern. Olivia's surgery was far more critical than you seem to realize. There were moments when we almost lost her. The words hit me like a ton of bricks. I almost died, and they weren't even here. But you said it was just her appendix, Dad stammers. A ruptured appendix is serious, especially when left untreated for so long. Olivia will need extensive care during her recovery. My parents look shocked, but then Emma interrupts. Mom, Dad, can we go show Grandma my trophy now? To my disbelief, they actually consider it. That's when Zoe steps in, her voice sharp. I've called my parents. They've offered to let Olivia stay with us during her recovery. For a moment, I feel relief, then guilt, then anger. Why do I feel guilty? Why do I need my best friend's family to step up when my own parents won't? As my family leaves, promising to visit soon, though I don't believe them, I overhear Dr. Chen talking to a nurse outside. It was touch and go for a while. If we'd waited any longer to operate, well, let's just say Olivia's lucky to be alive. The words echo in my mind. Lucky to be alive. And where were my parents during that life or death moment? Watching Emma win a science fair. The next weeks blur together in recovery and revelation. I'm moving with Zoe's family, and for the first time in years I feel seen. Zoe's mom checks on me regularly, making I'm comfortable and taking my meds. Zoe's dad cracks terrible jokes that somehow make the pain more bearable. How's our young Picasso doing today? He asks one morning, bringing me breakfast in bed. I smile, a genuine one this time. Better, thanks. I can't thank you all enough for this. Zoe squeezes my hand. That's what family does. Live, real family. Those words hit hard, but in a good way. Mr. Johnson visits often, bringing news that reignites my passion. Olivia, there's this incredible art program I think you should apply for. It could be your ticket to bigger things. We spend hours working on my portfolio, and for the first time, I feel like my art matters, like I matter. The day I'm well enough to return home, I brace myself for the confrontation I know is coming. My parents greet me with all smiles and welcome homes, but I'm not buying it anymore. We need to talk, I say, my voice steadier than I feel. Of course, sweetie. What about? Mom asks, distracted by her phone. I take a deep breath. About how you missed my life-threatening surgery for Emma's science fair. About how you've always put her first, made me feel invisible. The room goes silent. Dad sputters, now Olivia, that's not fair. Not fair? I laugh bitterly. What's not fair is nearly dying alone in a hospital while my parents celebrate my sister's trophy. Emma, who's been lurking in the doorway, suddenly explodes. It's not my fault you're jealous of my success. Maybe if you worked harder. Emma, Mom gasps, but I see it now, the golden child's true colors. I stand my ground. I'm done being your afterthought. I'm staying with Zoe's family until I'm 18. Then I'm out of here for good. The aftermath is chaotic. Dr. Peterson, our family doctor who's known us for years, gets involved. He reports my parents to child services, citing medical neglect. I've watched this situation deteriorate for years, he tells the social worker. What happened during Olivia's surgery was the last straw. My emancipation case moves forward, supported by testimony from Dr. Chen, Mr. Johnson, and others who've witnessed my parents' neglect. Meanwhile, my art starts gaining attention. A piece I created during recovery, a stark emotional portrayal of isolation in a family, wins a local contest, leading to a scholarship opportunity at a prestigious art school. Mr. Johnson beams with pride when I tell him, "You're going places, Olivia. Your pain has become your power." As news of my parents' neglect spreads, their carefully crafted image crumbles. Dad's law firm puts him on leave pending an investigation, and Mom's social circle, once a source of bragging rights about Emma's achievements, turns its back on her. Emma, unused to not being the center of attention, lashes out, but her outbursts only serve to highlight the dysfunction that's been simmering beneath the surface all along. On my 18th birthday, I stand in front of my new apartment, keys in hand. Zoe, her parents, and Mr. Johnson surround me, ready to help me move in. "You did it, Liv," Zoe says, hugging me tight. "You reclaimed your life." I smile, knowing that the girl in that painting, the one trapped in a family that never saw her, isn't just an image anymore. She's me, and she's finally, truly alive. Olivia's journey raises important questions about family dynamics and self-worth. What would you have done in her situation? Is cutting ties with neglectful family members ever justified, or should blood relations always be given another chance? Share your thoughts in the comments below.